In a world where the promise of a better job often lures us into the unknown, the line between opportunity and deception can blur in the most chilling ways. Today I'm going to share with you 5 true stories of unsuspecting victims who found themselves entangled in fake job interviews online. These are not just cautionary tales, they are harrowing encounters that will make you question the trust you place in the digital age. What happens when the hopeful pursuit of a new career leads you down a dark path filled with psychological manipulation and sinister intentions? As we delve into these spine-tingling accounts, prepare yourself for a chilling exploration of betrayal, fear, and the eeriness of human nature. These narratives will make you reconsider your next online application and keep you on the edge of your seat. So, brace yourself, because what you are about to hear might forever alter your perception of the virtual job market and the dangers that lurk within it. I still remember the night it began, a Tuesday, if I recall correctly. The air was thick with humidity, a stifling blanket that seemed to cling to my skin as I sat nervously in front of my laptop, the flickering screen illuminating my face with a ghostly glow. I had stumbled upon an online job posting that seemed too good to be true, an entry-level position with a promising tech startup, complete with an enticing salary and the flexibility of remote work. I clicked apply without a second thought, desperate to escape the dead-end job I was trapped in at the time. The interview was scheduled for 10 p.m. I thought that was odd, but as I paced around my cluttered apartment, I figured it was just a quirk of the company's management style. The clock ticked closer to the hour, and I felt a knot tightening in my stomach, a feeling I attributed to the anxiety of job hunting, not knowing what was about to unfold. I logged on to the video call, and instantly I was greeted by a figure shrouded in shadows. The dim light of their room made it hard to see their face. "Hello." The voice was smooth yet unnerving, like a silk thread dragging over glass. "Thank you for joining us, Jennifer." Yeah, thanks for having me," I replied, forcing a smile, fighting the overwhelming desire to glance away from the screen. I could hear a faint scratching sound behind me, but I brushed it off, attributing it to the restless neighborhood raccoons that often rummaged through the trash outside my window. As the interview progressed, the questions they asked grew increasingly bizarre. "What's your greatest fear?" the shadowy figure queried, their face still obscured, but I could feel the intensity of their gaze. I hesitated, caught off guard. I guess, being trapped?" I stammered. "Trapped," they echoed, the word hanging in the air like an ominous fog. "Interesting. Tell me more." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Well, I mean, like in a job that I don't like, or in a scary situation?" My voice cracked, and I could see the figure leaning closer, the shadows deepening around them. "Fear can be a powerful motivator, Jennifer," they said, their voice lowering to an almost conspiratorial whisper. "Do you think you could confront your fears if you had to?" I started to sweat, the air growing thick and suffocating. I don't know.
"Maybe. Perhaps we could arrange a situation for you to find out," they suggested with a smirk that sent a shiver down my screen. Flickered, and I felt the room grow colder. I glanced around. The scratching I had heard earlier returned, more pronounced now, almost rhythmic. "I'm sorry, but I think I need to reschedule," I said, trying to sound composed. My finger hovered over the end call button, but an overwhelming urge to know what would happen next held me captive. "Are you sure?" they pressed, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. "This opportunity doesn't come often. We can help you, if you let us." Before I could respond, the power flickered and the room plunged into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, its screen illuminating my face in the pitch black. As I tried to regain composure, the sound of my laptop began to emit static, followed by a low, pulsating hum that vibrated through the floor beneath my feet.
"Jennifer," the figure's voice called out from the darkness, but it sounded different now, warped. "Are you still there? What do you want from me?" I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. The scratching sound grew louder, now accompanied by something wet, slapping against the floor. My heart raced as I stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape the suffocating silence of my apartment. "You really want to leave?" they asked, their voice echoing from every shadow, bouncing off the walls like a taunt. "You might just miss out on your greatest opportunity." I yanked the door open, and as I stepped outside, reality shifted around me. The streetlights flickered, casting ominous shadows that danced along the pavement. I turned back to look at my apartment, now a dark, gaping mouth, swallowing any light around it. The door slammed shut behind me, and I felt a gust of wind rush past, almost as if the building itself was exhaling. "Why did I even apply?" I muttered to myself as I wandered down the street, desperately trying to shake off the unsettling feeling crawling under my skin. I couldn't shake the impression that the figure was still watching me, lurking in the recesses of my mind. In my haste, I rounded the corner and stumbled upon an abandoned house. It loomed like a monolith, its windows dark and its structure sagging with decay. I hesitated, the scratching sound creeping back into my ears, but curiosity pulled me toward it. I stepped inside, the stale air wrapping around me like a shroud. The interior was a ghost of its former self, wallpaper peeling, floorboards creaking underfoot. I could feel my heart thumping in my chest, each beat amplifying the silence that enveloped me. A flicker of movement caught my eye at the end of the hallway, and I instinctively froze. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The air grew heavier and the scratching intensified, a cacophony of nails on wood. I wanted to turn back, to run, but something compelled me forward. As I approached, I saw it, a door slightly ajar, light spilling out from the crack. My breath hitched in my throat. "Hello," I whispered, pushing the door open. Inside stood a mirror, tall and dark, reflecting not just the room, but someone standing behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the empty hallway stretching behind me like a void. I turned back to the mirror, and a chill raced through me. The figure from the interview was there, their face now fully visible, a wicked grin stretching across their features. "Welcome to your new reality, Jennifer," they said, their voice echoing as if the walls themselves were speaking. "Are you ready to face your fears?" The mirror shimmered, and in that moment, I understood. The job interview was a trap, a dark reflection of my own insecurities, pulling me deeper into a realm where my fears would come alive. I stumbled back, ready to flee, but the walls began to close in, and I felt the brush of cold fingers wrapping around my wrists, pulling me back into the darkness. "Don't fight it," they whispered, their voice now a symphony of sinister laughter. "You're already part of the team," I screamed, but it was swallowed by the void as the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass splintering through the air, each reflecting a different version of my terrified face. And then, just like that, everything went black. I was no longer in control, trapped in a nightmare of my own making, one I could never wake from. It was a strange day when I received an email with the subject line, "Job interview confirmation." I had been searching for work for months, and this was the first glimmer of hope I had seen in quite some time. The email came from a company I had never heard of, called Spectra Solutions. The message was brief, and the instructions were clear. I was to join a video call that afternoon at a peculiar hour, 4:13 p.m. I chuckled at the odd time but figured it was just a quirky company. As 4:13 p.m. approached, I sat nervously at my kitchen table, the sunlight hitting the wall in such a way that it cast elongated shadows, making the entire room feel unsettling. I poured myself a cup of coffee, hoping it would calm my jittery nerves. I logged into my laptop, the familiar whirring sound of the fans echoing in the quiet of my apartment. The moment I clicked the link, my heart raced, the screen flickered, and then I saw them. The panel was composed of 3 figures, their features obscured by shadows. The room behind them was dimly lit, and it felt as if I had stumbled into a forgotten corner of the world. I cleared my throat and forced a smile. "Hello, I'm here for the interview." The one in the center leaned forward, their face still difficult to discern. "Welcome, we were expecting you." I could hear the tension in their voice, something unsettling about it, but I brushed it off. "Thank you." The questions began innocuously enough. even if they felt disjointed. What are your greatest strengths? How do you handle stress? I did my best to respond, but the atmosphere weighed heavily on me. Their eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to pierce through the screen, and I felt an inexplicable chill wash over me. Then the question shifted. Do you believe in the unseen? One of them asked suddenly, as if probing my very soul. The flickering light in the room had begun to warp my perception. I hesitated. I suppose, in a way? Do you think it would be wise to ignore it? The figure pressed, their voice low and rhythmic, sending a shiver down my spine. I felt trapped, like a moth drawn to a flame. My instinct screamed at me to disconnect, to run away from this strange interaction. But the panic was swiftly followed by morbid curiosity. What do you mean? The figure smiled. At least, I think it was a smile. The way their lips curled sent dread spiraling through my gut. Let's just say that knowledge comes at a price, and those who seek it may find themselves altered. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Suddenly, the background of their video feed shifted, revealing a dark room filled with what appeared to be twisted, grotesque art pieces. The shapes were inhuman, and my stomach twisted as I realized they were not merely art, but something much more sinister. My heart raced, and I could feel beads of sweat forming on my brow. Are you comfortable? The figure asked, the question loaded with meaning. I felt like a bug trapped under a magnifying glass exposed. We have an opportunity for you, a chance to prove your worth. You will be given access to secrets few ever witness, but you must understand, once you see, you cannot unsee. What are you talking about? My voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Experience it for yourself, the figure replied. And just like that, the video call cut to black. I was left staring at an empty screen, the glowing cursor blinking in rhythm with my racing heart. What the hell was that? I felt the room close in on me, shadows creeping along the walls. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. Another email from Spectra Solutions. This time, I hesitated before opening it, dread gnawing at my insides. The message contained only a single line. You will never be alone again. The power cut out moments later, plunging my apartment into darkness. Panic surged through me. I scrambled for my phone, the only source of light in the oppressive gloom. I needed to leave, to escape whatever had just happened. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The frame felt wrong, as if it had warped overnight. Heavy breaths echoed in the silence, and I turned, heart pounding, only to be met with the same shadowy figures from the call, now standing in the doorway. They were no longer confined to the screen. Their faces were contorted, stretching into grotesque smiles, eyes void of life, yet somehow aware. We're here to help, one of them said, its voice oozing with false comfort. Help? I croaked, stepping back. My mind raced, searching for an escape. What do you want from me? We want you to join us, another figure murmured, inching closer. You have so much potential. You can see the truths others cannot, but the choice is yours. I felt my resolve crumbling. The shadows danced in the corners of my vision, whispering secrets I wasn't prepared to hear. I don't want anything to do with you, I shouted, the words escaping in a mixture of fear and defiance. Then why do you still sit? Why don't you run? The figures laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. You cannot escape what you do not understand. With a surge of adrenaline, I finally managed to wrench the door open, stumbling into the hallway.
I ran down the stairwell, my pulse pounding in my ears. I reached the ground floor and burst into the street, gasping for air. The world outside felt tainted, distorted, as though the very fabric of reality had shifted. But just when I thought I might find solace, I felt the presence behind me. The shadows were there, lurking in my periphery, just out of sight. I turned, expecting to confront them. There was nothing, only the quiet hum of the city at night.
I don't know how long I wandered, fear driving me forward. Days turned to weeks, and I thought I had escaped their influence, but I was wrong. The whispers began to invade my mind too. I'd catch glimpses of shadowy figures in crowds, and sometimes, just sometimes, I'd see their grinning faces in the reflection of shop windows. As the sun began to set, I felt the chill once more. A familiar voice echoed in my mind, "Join us." And I knew that no matter how far I ran, I would never truly escape the darkness they had unleashed within me. The fear of the unknown had become a part of me, intertwined with my very being. I had learned their truth, and now I was forever bound to the unseen. I remember the very first time I spotted the strange post on a job-seeking website. It was a late evening, the kind where the sun sinks quickly and the shadows spill over everything, making the familiar feel foreign. I was curled up on my couch, the flickering light of my laptop illuminating my face in an almost sickly glow. My mum had always scolded me about staying up too late, saying that nothing good happens after dark. I shrugged her warnings off. After all, job hunting at 2 a.m. seemed reasonable, right? I clicked on the ad that read, "Urgent hiring, remote interview, uncover your potential." It was vague, yet something about it piqued my curiosity. I felt an unsettling tingle run down my spine, but I brushed it off. Who knows? Maybe this was my golden ticket to something bigger. I sent in my application right away, hoping my hasty decision wouldn't come back to haunt me. The next day, I received an email. The company claimed to be a tech startup, and they wanted to schedule an interview for that evening. I was thrilled. It felt like a spark of hope in what had been a dark week. I had lost my previous job just 2 months back, and bills were piling up. I needed this. As the evening approached, I prepared my small corner of the living room for the virtual interview. I adjusted the webcam, tidied up a bit, and wore my best shirt. I couldn't shake the disquieting feeling, though, as I noticed the walls seemed to close in on me. The dim light of the lamp flickered erratically, casting long, trembling shadows that danced like phantoms across the room. I settled into the chair, attempting to breathe through my mounting anxiety. My heart raced as the clock struck 8, and a video call request appeared on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the accept button. What if it was a scam? I had read enough horror stories online about people getting lured into traps, but the desperate need for a job propelled me forward, and I clicked. The screen filled with the face of a man in a crisp white shirt. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His pupils appeared unnaturally large, and there was a glint in them that made my stomach churn. "Hello, Jennifer," he said, his voice smooth yet chilling. "I'm excited to meet you." Hi," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thank you for the opportunity." "Let's skip the formalities," he interrupted, his expression shifting to something more serious. "You've already been selected based on your profile. We just need to ensure you fit the criteria." "What criteria?" I asked, now feeling a cold sweat trickling down my back. He leaned closer to the camera, and I instinctively recoiled. "The criteria of suitability," he whispered, as if sharing a secret. "You see, this position requires a certain willingness to embrace the unknown." My heart sank, dread pooling in my gut. "I don't understand." "Just a few simple questions to determine your readiness," he continued, unperturbed. "What are you most afraid of?" I hesitated. Hadn't he read my resume? Failing, losing everything I've worked for. "Interesting," he said, tilting his head as though pondering my answer. "And how far would you go to avoid that fate?" The room felt colder, and I could see my breath fogging up the air. I would do anything," I stammered, a bead of sweat forming on my brow.
"Anything, you say?" His gaze intensified, and the shadows behind him seemed to stretch and swirl as though they were alive. "Would you be willing to sacrifice your sanity?" "What do you mean?" My voice trembled, and I felt the threads of reality beginning to fray. "I don't think I understand." "Let's test your limits." He leaned back. The space around him darkened. "Let's see how much you truly want this job." Suddenly, the screen distorted, flickering with dark static. I could hear whispers now, echoes of voices overlapping in a cacophony of despair. My heart raced as the shadows of my living room morphed into grotesque shapes, looming behind me. I could feel their presence, cold and suffocating. I turned around, half expecting to see someone standing there, but the room was empty, save for my own reflection staring back at me from the screen. "You feel it?" he asked,
his voice now barely a whisper. The fear? Yes, I shouted, panic surging through me. What is happening? Accept it, Jennifer. It's only the beginning. You wanted a job. Now you must face your nightmares. In that moment, I realized the interview was a trap, twisted game designed to prey upon my insecurities. I tried to end the call, but my fingers fumbled over the keyboard, the keys feeling sticky and unresponsive. The man's face contorted, his smile widening unnaturally, revealing sharp teeth that didn't belong to a human. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, my screams. I was drowning in a sea of shadows. "I have to go," I finally managed to shout, but the words were swallowed by an overwhelming darkness, and then the screen went black. I stumbled back, tearing at the laptop to shut it off, my breaths coming in frantic gasps. The room felt strangely silent, as if the world outside had been muted. I flung the device onto the couch, my heart racing, and turned to face the window. The night was still, the air thick with the scent of rain. I could hear the distant rustle of leaves, but it felt wrong, like the world was holding its breath. For hours I sat there, waiting for the feeling of dread to dissipate, but it only grew heavier. I could almost hear the man's voice echoing in my ears, a reminder that I had been chosen. As the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, I gathered the strength to check my laptop. My fingers trembled as I opened it, half expecting to find ominous messages or the haunting face of my interviewer. Instead, my email inbox was empty. Nothing remained. I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare, a figment of my anxiety. But as I pulled myself up, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened screen. My eyes were sunken, haunted, and the realization hit me. What if the job wasn't just an interview? What if it was a curse? Days passed, and I kept looking over my shoulder, convinced I was being watched. The memory of the man lingered, creeping into my dreams until they became nightmares fueled by dread. I didn't dare apply for another job. The fear of facing whatever that had been again paralyzed me. But the whispers never ceased. They followed me, echoing my insecurities, feeding on my anxiety. I began to see shapes in the shadows, fleeting figures that darted away whenever I turned to look directly. Was it my imagination, or had I opened a door I couldn't close? One evening, as I sat alone with the bleakness of my thoughts, the laptop pinged. A new email notification. My heart raced as I opened it, only to see a simple message. "We're looking forward to your next interview." I stared blankly, the words blurring before my eyes. I hadn't even applied. My gut twisted as I realized I was still in the game, and it was far from over. I was trapped, forever bound to that cursed pursuit of a job, my nightmare just beginning. I remember the night vividly, even now, when I stumbled upon that online job listing. It was one of those sites where the promise of a quick job seemed almost too good to be true. The ad stood out with its vibrant colors, flashing urgent hiring in bold letters. I had been scrolling aimlessly, mindlessly, through pages of mundane jobs that never seemed to fit. But this one, it felt different. The description was vague, almost cryptic. I remember it saying, "Help wanted for a unique opportunity. Serious inquiries only." As strange as it was, something compelled me to click. I can still feel the cold sweat trickling down my spine as I typed in my information. My name, my phone number, and the part that sent shivers down my back. Are you willing to engage in unorthodox interviewing methods? What did that even mean? But the prospect of being hired, of stepping out of my dead-end retail job, was intoxicating. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Hours went by, and I almost forgot about it until my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you for applying. We would like to conduct your interview tonight. Are you available?" An unsettling mix of excitement and dread washed over me. It was late, but I had no plans. I responded with a quick yes, my heart racing. The instructions were simple, but bizarre. "Join a video call at 11 p.m. sharp. Bring a mirror." I nearly laughed, thinking it was a prank. Yet, as the clock ticked toward 11, I felt an inexplicable urge to comply. I grabbed the small mirror from my bathroom, its surface slightly tarnished, and sat at my desk, laptop open, my reflection staring back nervously. The call started promptly at 11. The screen flickered to life, revealing a dimly lit room. The interviewer was a shadowy figure, his face obscured by darkness. "Thank you for joining," he said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. "We value the essence of who you are. This interview will be unlike any other." I swallowed hard, his tone chilling me to the bone. "First question," he continued, leaning slightly forward. "What do you see in the mirror?" I hesitated. Just me?" I stammered, glancing at my reflection. The flickering screen made it hard to focus, but something seemed off. My image appeared distorted, almost melting into the darkness behind me. "Look deeper," he urged, his voice dropping an octave. "What do you truly see?" I could feel the air growing heavy, thick with dread.
I see." My voice trailed off as I squinted at my reflection. It was as if I was staring into a void. The shadows behind me began to swirl, whispering softly, teasingly. My heart raced, sounding louder than my thoughts. I whispered, unsure if I was answering correctly. "Wrong," he said, his tone suddenly sharp. "Look closer. What lurks behind?" Panic surged through me. It felt as if the shadows were reaching out, curling around my throat, tightening with every heartbeat. "I can't," I gasped, my breath hitching. "You must face it," he commanded. "The truth lies within." I glanced back at the mirror, and that's when I saw it. Fleeting shadow darting just beyond my reflection. My heart dropped. It was there, a dark figure with grotesque features, its eyes glowing like embers. I recoiled in horror, nearly pushing my chair back. "What is that?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The interviewer leaned back, his expression unreadable. "That is what you hide from.
The part of you that seeks acknowledgement. You are afraid to face it. Embrace it." Sweat dripped from my brow as my panic escalated. "I can't. Please, just tell me what this is about." The shadows in the mirror writhed, and I could feel their cold breath brushing against my skin. "Your fear is your weakness," he said, his voice now echoing ominously. "No, I don't want this," I shouted, slamming the laptop shut. The screen went black, but the silence that followed was deafening. My heart raced, but the shadows didn't dissipate. They clung to me, whispering secrets, promises of revelations too terrible to comprehend. The night dragged on, each tick of the clock echoing in my skull. Every creak of the floorboard sent jolts of fear coursing through me. I tried to sleep, to block out the memory of that call, but the darkness felt alive, pulsing with the weight of unspoken horrors. Days turned to weeks, and the memory of that interview haunted me, manifesting in sleepless nights and fleeting shadows at the edge of my vision. I began to see things, figures lurking in my periphery, the whispers growing louder. Friends noticed my growing unease, but how could I explain? "I'm fine," I would say, though the truth twisted in my stomach. One evening, I received another message from the same unknown number. "We are still waiting for your answer." Panic surged. "What do you want from me?" I typed back, my fingers trembling. "Face what you fear. Join us again," it replied, chilling me to the core. I should have blocked the number. I should have turned off my phone. But the darkness within me stirred, whispering that I had to know. The need to confront that shadow consumed me. I agreed to another call, this time with a resolve I didn't feel. The night of the second interview, I set up the mirror once more, my hands shaking. As the clock struck 11, I clicked the link. The same shadowy figure appeared, but this time I felt an unsettling familiarity. "Welcome back," he said, his smile unnerving. "Are you ready to embrace your truth?" "I am," I replied, forcing the words out with a shaky breath. "I want to face it." "Excellent," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Look into the mirror." I leaned closer, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The figure behind me was there again, but this time it lingered, its features more distinct. A twisted smile crept across its face. I shivered, feeling the shadows claw at my consciousness. "What are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I am you," it replied, its voice a haunting echo of my own. "The parts you deny, the darkness you hide." "No!" I cried, but it was too late. The darkness surged, enveloping me, pulling me into its depths. The last thing I remember is the laughter, my own laughter, filling the room, mingling with the shadows as they consumed me whole. I don't know how long I've been here, trapped in this endless cycle of interviews, each one more horrifying than the last. I see my reflection often, but I'm never the one in control anymore. The shadows whispered truths I never wanted to hear. And now I'm just a spectator in my own life, forever waiting for the next call, forever entangled in the web of my own making. I still remember the first time I found the job listing. It was late at night, the kind of night when shadows seem to stretch longer than they should, and the silence in my apartment was thick, almost suffocating. I had been scrolling through pages and pages of job postings, desperate for something, anything, to bring in a bit of money. That's when I saw it. Remote administrative assistant needed. Immediate start. I clicked on the link, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and skepticism. The website looked legitimate enough, with a clean layout and professional design. I filled out my details, hesitating only for a moment at the part that asked for references. Who would I even put down? The last job I had was months ago, and I didn't exactly leave on good terms. Shaking my head, I entered my old manager's name, hoping I wouldn't have to explain anything more than necessary. Within minutes, I got a response. "Thank you for applying. Your name? We are impressed with your background and would like to schedule an interview." My heart raced. This could be my chance. With a few back-and-forth emails, we settled on a time for our conversation. The interviewer, a man named Marcus, sounded friendly enough, and I could sense a hint of urgency in his tone. "We need someone like you, and we need you fast," he said, which should have raised a red flag, but only fueled my eagerness. On the chosen day, I prepared myself. I set up my laptop in the living room, ensuring I had a decent background and adequate lighting. I even wore a shirt that looked professional, paired with pajama bottoms. As the clock ticked down to the scheduled time, my excitement was tempered by a creeping sense of unease. What if this was a scam? What if Marcus wasn't who he said he was? I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thoughts. I needed this job. When the video call connected, Marcus appeared on the screen, his appearance somewhat disheveled, with unkempt hair and a slightly vacant stare. "Thank you for joining. Your name?" he said, his voice oddly flat. "Let's get started." The interview was straightforward, but something about it felt off. For every question I answered, I felt his gaze linger just a moment too long. His questions turned increasingly peculiar, asking about my childhood experiences and even my fears. It was as if he were trying to dig deeper into my psyche rather than assess my professional qualifications. "Have you ever felt a presence around you?" he asked suddenly, causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. "You know, something that made you feel watched?" I chuckled nervously, debating whether I should take his question seriously. No, not really. I mean, sometimes at night, I feel like something is lurking, but..." He interrupted me, his eyes narrowing. "It's important to recognize those feelings or your name. They can guide you. Trust your instincts." His tone shifted, becoming almost sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being tested in some way, but I forced myself to continue. As the interview concluded, he smiled in a way that felt more like a grimace. "You're perfect for the position. I'll send over the contract immediately. Just remember, once you start, you can't go back." I nodded, feigning confidence, though the warning sent chills down my spine. Later that night, I received the email with the contract. It was filled with legal jargon, but one sentence caught my attention. "By accepting this position, you agree to relinquish all boundaries regarding your personal experiences and emotions." I stared at the screen for a long moment, my finger hovering over the accept buttons. My gut twisted in knots, but desperation pushed me forward. I clicked it. The next few days were a blur. I received strange assignments that seemed increasingly bizarre, tasks that had me recording my dreams or documenting eerie sensations I felt in my home. At first I thought it was harmless, but the lines between reality and something more sinister began to blur. Objects in my apartment would shift slightly when I wasn't looking, and I often caught glimpses of shadows darting past the corners of my vision. One evening, engulfed by an inexplicable sense of dread, I sat on my bed, staring at the wall as if it were about to speak to me. I remembered Marcus's words about trust and instincts, and I felt as if I was being watched. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it was relentless. Maybe I just need to take a break, I muttered to myself. I grabbed my phone and called my friend Julia, hoping her voice could distract me. "Hey, I've been feeling a bit off lately," I said, explaining the odd occurrences. "It's like, I don't know, something is wrong. Maybe you should quit the job," she suggested, her voice laced with concern. "Sounds sketchy. Maybe it's not worth it." I couldn't admit it, but she was right. The more I engaged with the job, the more uneasy I felt, but I also felt trapped. I had already committed so much. That night, I awoke to a sound that froze my blood. A soft whispering filled the room, echoing through the darkness. I strained to listen, my heart pounding as the words twisted and turned in the air. "You belong to us now." I shot up in bed, sweat beading on my forehead, and glanced at my phone. It was just after 3 a.m. The whispering continued, growing louder, more insistent. I bolted from my bed and ran to the living room, desperately trying to shake off the fear that threatened to consume me. Suddenly, my laptop flickered to life, and the screen displayed an ominous black background with white letters spelling, "Your fate is sealed." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. "Marcus!" I screamed, my voice quivering. "What did I get myself into?" But there was no answer, just the oppressive silence pressing down on me, heavier than before. I closed my eyes, wishing for it all to be a nightmare. In a moment of panic, I grabbed the laptop and slammed it shut, trying to block out the horror that seemed to seep from every corner of my apartment. But the whispering only grew louder, echoing through the walls as if the very house were alive, taunting me. "You're ours." I spent the rest of the night pacing, fighting the urge to call the police or anyone who might help. But what would I say? That I had gotten involved in a job that felt more like a curse? The thought felt ludicrous. The next morning, I resolved to quit. I drafted an email for Marcus explaining that I couldn't continue, but as I pressed send, a chill ran down my spine as the whispering resumed, this time clearer. "You can't escape." I turned to see the shadows gathering again in the corners of the room, taking form, twisting into shapes that made my skin crawl. I felt paralyzed, unable to move as they closed in. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making. My heart pounded viciously as I realized I had signed away my freedom for a promise that turned into a curse. In the end, I wasn't sure what had been real anymore. The job, the haunting, the whispers, they all blended into a suffocating fog. And as I stood there, consumed by darkness, I understood that some encounters were never meant to happen, and some choices could never be undone. So, have you ever felt a chill run down your spine like our characters did? Share your spooky stories in the comments. I love diving into those tales. If this video gave you a thrill, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. Until next time, stay brave. If you dare to return for more,